It's the biggest box office weekend of the year. We got a Barbenheimer dropping everywhere in movie theaters. People are lining up around the blocks, blockbusters everywhere all the time, all day long, back to back. Or if you want to go see the one back to back days, maybe you see one on Friday or Sunday. I went and saw both. And today, with me to talk about Barbie and Oppenheimer, I've got Angelina. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you guys? I'm good. I'm good. I'm back in LA. We are rolling. We're doing the things. It is summer in full swing over here.
Sorry, my audio got me.
Yeah, it was like your audio cut out. Are we good?
I was like, "What happened?" Okay, well, no, it's great to hear that you're having a good time. I know you're back in LA. So last week we were talking, you were in Florida, right? So
Yes,
hope that's going well, and you're getting back to your daily routine. Did you have a chance to go see Oppenheimer?
I did. I went and saw Oppenheimer. I loved Oppenheimer. And you saw both, right? You saw Barbie and Oppenheimer.
I went and saw both. I saw both. I actually so we're gonna start with but for the record, I did not do the double feature because I just that would have been look like and having sat through both movies, I can imagine that it's while it's the fun thing to do, I don't know if I'd recommend it because
That was
Oppenheimer is a long
what
movie.
I was going to initially do, and then my schedule switched around, and I couldn't make the show times, and I went and saw Oppenheimer at 11:15 p.m. I got out of the movie theater at 2:30 a.m. I'd been up since 5 a.m. I was like, yeah, I was slightly delusional watching the movie, which is, I guess, a good place to be. I feel like it gives more Christopher Nolan more credit.
Yeah, it's definitely one of Christopher Nolan's crowning achievements in a career that's filled with crowning achievements. And of course, you have Barbie, which is it couldn't be a more different movie. And you know what? That's where I want to start today. Let's talk about Barbie. And I want to
Come on,
just
Barbie, let's go party. Wait,
yeah.
okay. Was the
Okay, go
song
ahead.
featured? Was the song featured? I need to
No,
know.
it's actually not in the movie. However, I so here's the thing. I don't know where this music video exists right now because I went to this Wednesday early blowout party, Barbie screening at my AMC in town. And they had like the Dolby Cinema screens, like the best screen in the theater dedicated to it. I walked in, and this is a Wednesday evening. It's summertime, granted, right? But like it's Wednesday evening, but the line was at started at the entrance, and I just had to kind of like wait to get my ticket punched on the middle of the week, screening. And I felt incredibly underdressed because I only own like one pink shirt. I couldn't find it. And so I went, I'm like, oh, well, what are the odds? Like, and then it's like, there's this woman in front of me with her family. She's wearing these pink pajamas. She's got a pink blankie. Her daughter is all dressed in pink. I think her partner, her husband, whoever, like he had some kind of pink jacket thingy on. And then like every other person I saw, like there's like these tweens like walking in with like pink bandanas. There was this one guy, like I walked out of Oppenheimer a few days later, and then there were people coming in to watch like Barbie because you could tell who's coming to watch Barbie because they're wearing
Oh,
pink.
so
It's
I saw it at the Grove too, and I
yeah,
think I told you before, but when I tell you, I've never seen a movie theater more packed and drastically different. Like you saw all these people like fully dressed up for Barbie. The concessions line was like out the door, and the Grove is like a big AMC movie theater, really big. The lobby is huge, packed. I was like weaving through people. I gave up on popcorn. I was like, I'm not doing that. It was a trip. It was a big, big, big box office weekend for everyone across the nation for sure. But I
it
am
was.
really sad that you didn't dress up and go in character. At that point, you should have just gone and bought a pink shirt. It was a full
I
experience, Dan.
I know. Yeah, I know. I wish they were. You know what? This was a merchandising opportunity for
It
theaters.
was.
I know that's the one thing they don't do, but I bet you if movie theaters started to like have a merchandise stand or like store in, especially the big ones, like the one that I go to is probably the biggest AMC in like a 10-mile radius. So
Mm-hmm.
like in the central Connecticut area where I am, and like the next biggest AMC is like near New York and Trumbull, which is like if you
Mm.
come over the state lines at like 20-30 minutes later you'll hit that. So that's the other big one. So if they had like a merchandise section, and look, they can upcharge the heck out of you. They can sell you a
They
Barbie
can.
t-shirt for
Well,
$50 and
because
people
when
will
you
buy it.
You know how like you can pre-buy concessions? It offered me the opportunity to pre-buy a Barbie pink flamingo with my drink. I didn't do
I
it.
there was definitely some Barbie stuff being handed out at the concessions.
Mhm.
I actually don't have it with me right now because my one was a special screening, so they gave out posters and then they
Oh,
gave out a
cute.
badge that I either said I love Barbie or I am Barbie. And so when I did my out of theater reaction, I just put it on like and so
Wait, that's so cute.
yeah, it was really yeah, I didn't have it on while I was watching the movie because it was just like sitting off to the side. I barely could, get seats. Like I purchased my seats like pretty late in the game. So the theater was pretty much booked out. I
Mhm.
actually think I ended up sitting in like the row like where they have a special like room for people with disabilities, like if you're
Oh,
coming
like
in
the
with a
wheelchair.
wheelchair, and
Yeah.
then you have like and then you have seats next to that. So I think I got one of those seats. So I was actually partly worried. I was like, if they have somebody here who needs this, like usually the priority is given to like somebody who's
Yeah.
accompanying somebody in the wheelchair. So I don't want to be the person who's ruining the experience for somebody like
Yeah.
there who's needs the space. But I was like, you know what? I want to go see the movie. Hopefully things will work out. It ended up being like, a really, really fantastic experience. I had like people sitting next to me that were
Oh.
cackling, like they were like, you could tell there was like just these people who were off from school for the summer,
Okay,
full-fledged
so
families. It was like
getting into
everybody.
that, yeah, like getting into that.
Yeah.
So far, Barbie has like great reviews. I found some really great quotes. I wasn't able to go see it, as you guys know, which like makes me really sad. But right now we're already at 90% Rotten Tomato score, 4 to 5
Yeah.
on Common Sense. Um, Critics are giving this great reviews. What did you think about the movie?
So I have to say, when I walked out of the theater, it was to me probably the best film of the year, which is it's a
Okay.
difficult thing for me to bestow on any movie because like my expectations are always very high. And so I had that much fun at the movie theaters. I remember thinking to myself, I was smiling and laughing like year to year the whole time because even the moments that were a little cringy or like moments where they made some bold decisions to drop some references, like, okay, spoiler alert because I can't hold on to it any longer. There's a reference to Zack Snyder's Justice League in the movie that I just knew is going to either make people laugh really hard or offend them really, really like quite a lot. And it was
What
this
did they say?
it was this one like at one point in the movie, one of the Barbies is like, oh my god, it's like why do I feel like I've just been watching Zack Snyder's Justice League for too long? It's like it was in reference to like toxic masculinity. I feel like in some ways it was because like in this the story of the movie is basically like somehow the Kens end up being the bad guys because in the world of Barbie, Kens are treated like they exist to make Barbie happy, and
Mm-hmm.
then like Barbie and so Margot Robbie's Barbie and Ryan Gosling's Ken end up in the because there's apparently this portal to the real world for Barbie
Okay,
Land, so
well,
they
I
end up in
don't
the
want
real
full
world.
spoilers.
No, no,
No
no. I'm not
need.
giving so that the general premise is that because of that journey they like Ken realizes like what is it called? It's they go by like it's is it not paternity but is it patern not what's like what is the word for like it's a male led world? Patriarchy.
A
That's the
patriarchy?
word. Patriarchy.
He
Like
said
it can
paternity, everybody.
I'm like, what is the word? I was so close to it.
I literally couldn't follow you at all because like I didn't know where
Yeah.
that thread was going to end. I
Um
was just like,
but just
huh?
remember when you go watch the movie, like yeah, that's a big theme here. Not theme as in like the movie's about patriarchy. Well,
But
in
it's
a
the
way it is.
Greta Gerwig,
But
right? So like
yeah.
we kind of knew she was gonna lay
Hmm.
some land here, and
Yeah.
so overall, like, do you feel like this because there was a real risk of this getting like very political, right? Do you feel like it was too political? Do you feel like it was the perfect amount of like societal references? Like, did she go too far? Did she not go far enough? Or was it like the perfect balance?
I don't think she went very far. I mean, I thought it was really well balanced. It ultimately the movie is like a celebration of femininity and like all the like. There's this one review on Rotten Tomatoes that I think is a very good summation of what I thought the movie is about. Right. I'm just trying to find it. This is from um Yep, this is from the New Republic. Grace Seger, she's like a top critic on Rotten Tomatoes. This is
Mhm.
what she said. Barbie is surprisingly spiritual, treating the messiness and contradictions of womanhood with reverence. And that is probably one of the most accurate ways I can describe this movie because
I just got
ultimately
chills.
that's
I'm
what
like
it's
so
about.
excited to go see it. I was so sad I couldn't see
Yeah.
it, but I literally could not see it this weekend.
Yeah.
Um, all right, I'm excited. Let's talk
I
about some
recommend
box
it.
office numbers though, because we're not the only people that were like, we have to go see this movie.
Yeah.
Where are we at right now on box office weekend?
Box office, I mean, look, this movie is now the highest opening of the year. So I was looking at these numbers now. These numbers are up to date as of Sunday AM. So like I'm sure we will get, more accurate numbers on Monday. But Barbie is set to make like $155 million at the domestic box office opening. And I
Yeah.
think that internationally that's numbers gotta be like double, with what it makes abroad. I think Barbie will probably not perform as well abroad as Oppenheimer because
Hmm.
I think it's while
The
it's not
subject
uniquely
matter.
American, like there
Yeah,
are a lot of
that's
the movie
also what
takes
I wanted
place
to
in
ask.
LA and Hollywood, so I think that it will play better with American
Well,
audiences.
also internationally, like you have to
Yeah.
internationally too, like outside of the UK, when you start to get into some of like the Asian, Southeast Asian countries, I don't. Is there a risk that China just won't play this movie? Do you think that they
I don't I don't know if there was any issues like because I remember there was something. I think Barbie got banned in one country somewhere. I think was it I'm gonna be misquoting this, but I think it was either Vietnam or something, and it was for a reason that seems relatively
impact
trivial.
in Vietnam? Let's see. Yeah, banned in
So
Vietnam over how a childlike map stirred a South China Sea dispute. Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Oh, I mean, like I don't
Yeah.
know just how many. Like ultimately, this movie, like here's some of the simple facts. Barbie is the highest grossing opening weekend of the year
Mhm.
now. Previously, that was Super Mario Bros. Super Mario Bros. Also currently sits as the highest grossing movie of the year. It's the only movie that has made $1 billion this year so far. And when you look at like everything else that has come out or is set to come out, I find it hard to uh really pick out any movie that is gonna, even Barbie and Oppenheimer. I don't know if any of these movies are gonna make $1 billion. Like it's in
Mhm.
a post-pandemic world where we're still seeing the box office recover and people still like their habits either are forever changed or they're just, I mean, and the economy isn't necessarily in the best shape, so people are being more wise with where they spend their money. So it's difficult. I mean, but here's the thing, the reason why Super Mario Bros. Made as much money as it did is because it's like a four quadrant movie that was appeal to everybody.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think Super Mario Bros. Had the kind of like social media, just the word of mouth behind it that
Hmm.
Barbenheimer is bringing to Barbie and
Yeah.
Oppenheimer, which is probably the most successful, you know, uh, organic marketing campaign that sort of just emerged and then everybody hopped on it, including the studios and all the actors and producers and directors just hopped on it and said, you know what, this is better for everybody. So let's just give this thing a push and do everything we can to make this a big deal. I've never seen a phenomenon like this, and it's leading to probably the biggest box office weekend of the year because between
Hmm.
Barbie and Oppenheimer, and then Mission Impossible and everything else that's in theaters, and the fact that we're in July, like peak summer movie season, I don't think we're gonna have a higher grossing box office weekend the
For the
rest of the
rest of the
year.
year. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, unless something, because they always drop a lot on Christmas Day or like Christmas Eve, unless something around that time gets picked up, I doubt it. But we're also, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the strike will possibly affect a lot of release dates, which could mean that this is really one of the final like big box opening weekends, because stuff
Yeah.
that's pushed and set for later in the year might get pushed even further because of the strikes.
I
So
mean, because I
we'll
heard
see.
that during the middle of last week, I'm sure you were seeing the same headlines I
Hmm.
was. Like, Warner Brothers is thinking about moving Dune
Hmm.
Part Two to like next year. I think it
Yeah.
was one other movie, like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, they might move because
Which I don't understand that one though, because it's like that's been filming for so long. They have to be done with filming.
So there's a
They
video
might be
on.
post-production. Like, I
They're
don't.
definitely so there was an article in the Hollywood Reporter this past week that talked about what's going on with Aquaman 2 right now. They've gone through 3 rounds of reshoots, and with the latest round taking place after James Gunn and Peter Safran came in. They,
Why?
at one point in one of the earlier cuts, they had Michael Keaton's Batman, and then the movie got slotted to come out after The Flash because originally it was going to come out before The Flash. So then, based on the story of The Flash, because Flash reintroduces Michael Keaton into the franchise, or into the DCU proper for the first time. So then they were like, okay, well, now we're going to have Ben Affleck's Batman in there. So then that's why I think earlier this year we had these photos of Ben Affleck's on the studio lot and with Jason Momoa, and they were doing some kind of scene together. And now I think the latest round of reshoots, they've taken out any of those. So we're not going to have either of those Batman in there. And what we're going to instead have is a story that feels more disconnected from the older DCEU, and because James Gunn doesn't want to promise a universe that's not going to come to fruition because they're rebooting everything.
Yeah.
So, however, they asked for 5 days for reshoots, and they were able to finish everything in 4. So apparently James wanted everybody. It went so well. They're really happy with where they are. And the first Aquaman struggled to kind of have a focused story until post-production. So it looks like right now, even though they haven't been performing well in test screenings, with the latest set of reshoots and hopefully whatever else they're rejigging, maybe I think they're feeling better about the movie today than ever before. But the biggest thing I took away from that, and then there's a video about this on DCU Daily on our channel, quick plug, where I explain this in more detail. But ultimately, it's a good sign that Warner Brothers is willing to keep investing money in this movie because they clearly believe that it's going to do well. And the first one made $1 billion.
But as an actor, that drives me absolutely batty because it makes it harder for me to do a good job when I have no idea what the actual story is. You know what I mean? So it's like, it drives me nuts, but it is what it is. Like, I'm more of a type A kind of person. Jason Momoa seems like a very go with whatever hits me. I've never met him. I hear he's great, but you know what I mean? I'm sure he's fine with it, but I'm over here like, I would be so mad. But whatever, we got it. Okay, back to Oppenheimer. We got off on a tangent there about DC.
By the way, I just gotta say, I gotta ask you, when are you gonna go watch Barbie? Because I'm interested.
So honestly, because I missed it for opening weekend, I have friends that are going together on Wednesday, and I think we're all gonna dress up and do it. So I'm literally just gonna text them and be like, "I'm coming. I'm gonna be there." So yeah, we're gonna have a full experience. I'm very excited. I will dress up in pink, Dan, just for you.
Okay. You. Awesome. Okay. Well, I mean, let's then talk about Oppenheimer. The other half of Barbenheimer. You went and saw it. What did you think about I almost said Barbie. What did you think about Oppenheimer?
So I had a screw up with the tickets, and I accidentally got the wrong ticket date, which I don't even know how it happened. So I was supposed to go at 10:30, and there were no more seats. And they were like, "You got this for the wrong date. Like, you can come back next Friday." And I was like, "I got a seat today." So I had to wait in the movie theater until 11:15 to go see it, which is why I ended up going to such a late show time. The theater was full. The 10:30, no more seats. 11:15, we just barely got seats. IMAX is loud. Christopher Nolan really likes to go in with a bang. I think it was Cillian Murphy's best acting overall. I thought it was a great story. I thought and it's fairly historically accurate from what I'm reading. As far
it's based
as
on the book. I forget the name of the book, but it's based on the book itself. I think won a Pulitzer Prize or something. Mm-hmm. It was yeah. So
I mean, you get to see so many historical, big scientific players in this movie, and there are parts of it that I thought were really beautiful. I think Emily Blunt did a great job. I was floored. Florence Pugh. Maybe they underused her. I don't know. I feel like she could have done a little bit more in the storyline overall. But overall, Cillian Murphy, killed it. It was a great story. I think Christopher Nolan's editing was riveting. I was like, he does that thing where he sort of like goes back and forth in the timeline and you have to sort of piece it together. The only thing that confused me was the very end. So we can go over what you feel about the movie, and then we can like maybe compare that, because the very end, like the last 2 minutes of the storyline, screw up the timeline.
It does. It's okay. So Christopher Nolan's known for doing these non-chronological sort of
Yeah.
stories, the non-linear storytelling, and that's something which I think that's why like Inception and the Dark Knight trilogy, even like those movies, in those
Inception,
movies
it
it
made
flows more
sense.
naturally.
But this made less sense
Yeah,
because everything that you see in the timeline, like it keeps sort of going back and forth, right? And it all fits until the very last one. But that day in the timeline happened before he ever started making the bomb. And so it was like, wait, what? Did I miss something? Did I mishear something? I was very confused.
because doesn't that scene? So was that scene? But who hires him as the project director? That's Matt Damon's character after he's accepted
Yeah.
the role at the university. So before,
But he was already
yeah,
in that
yeah,
role at Princeton and living
hmm
in that house. And that's how I like double checked, because when they get in the argument after the fact, they're in that house still and they're moving away from that house. So unless I misunderstood something about the timeline, that day that he talks to
yeah.
Einstein at the lake happened before he went to go start making the bomb, correct?
I'm pretty sure, because remember when they at the end of the conversation in the last scene of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
when they're kind of show in detail what they talked about, he mentions to him, remember the piece of paper that he brought to him
Yeah.
for double checking the calculation. I think that's what you're talking. So
Yeah.
so that to me shows that that particular scene took place after they had made the bomb and the bomb was dropped already.
Okay, so
So
maybe I just need to rewatch the movie.
that's because I had to think about that too. But
Yeah.
that was because in the moment, just kind of just taking it in. That's how I knew that scene. It took place before the Senate hearing, but it took place after the
After the
bomb was
bomb.
made in Los Alamos and they dropped it. So it was
But then you see that scene before you see any of the rest of it. Okay, understood.
yeah.
So I
So
did. I
so
just
Christopher Nolan
misplaced the
has a really
timeline.
good habit of
Yeah.
start kind of stating something early and then setting it up and then paying it off in the best way imaginable, like towards the end. He
So, and
does it in all of
I
his
will tell
movies.
you, this is definitely a movie that makes you think. You really have to think. I was very tired, you guys, very tired. Obviously very engaged, but I think my brain maybe was like moving a little too slow to put it all together. Um, really great movie, makes you think. I do think that this is, again, like Tenet and Inception, you have to go see it twice. Like, I
Yeah.
feel like I didn't fully understand Inception and all of its different moving parts until I saw it the second time. And I feel like this is going to be one of those movies that we're going to keep catching new stuff every time we go see it. So honestly, I might go see it again. I might wait until it comes out though, like at home. But yeah, good movie.
Yeah,
I
I
think
look
it's phenomenal.
I from for I completely agree with you. The movie is, I mentioned this I think before the show or even earlier in the show, that it's one of Christopher Nolan's crowning achievements in a
Mm-hmm.
career that's filled with them. Like I still think, in my opinion, again, this is just my opinion, that The Dark Knight is still his best film ever. And then, after that you have things like I think Inception and Interstellar rank really, really high on my list.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly love Interstellar because of like how it deals with concepts in physics in a way that is, from a storytelling perspective, just genius, but also it doesn't discount the scientific accuracy of those concepts.
And I
Like a
think
lot of
that's also
movies
what
can do that.
yeah, I think that's what I love about Christopher Nolan. He sort of dives into these fully like scientific eras that I don't think he has any background in, right? But
He doesn't, but he does his
he always,
research.
yeah, he has.
Yeah.
I have failed to see like big inaccuracies, which make me love it even more because he makes a beautiful story out of like life and truth and like science, which I think is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, and you know what? Like this is something where he's always kept the priority on getting the scientific accuracy right and telling a good story, a
Yeah.
story that's grounded in characters and just good storytelling fundamentals. Early in his career, Jonathan Nolan, his brother, was writing a lot of his movies, and then or they would collaborate. And then as he has gone on, he started to just write the movies himself. Like at the end of this movie, I
Yeah.
noticed like it said written and directed for the screen for film by Christopher Nolan, and that's something where I think for Interstellar, for example, he had Kip Thorne, who is a well-renowned physicist, one of the well-known names of the modern era of physics, who was his big scientific advisor for Interstellar and dealing with concepts with like general relativity and everything that they do.
Yeah.
In this movie, I think, he went in and did the research. Obviously, it's based on a book. I think this is probably the first adapted screenplay he's ever written and directed, because he's generally like either going off historical events like what we did in Dunkirk. And Dunkirk also a linear event, but the way that he made his movie story play
I
out
haven't seen
was very
Dunkirk. That's the
non-linear.
one big movie of his that I haven't seen, so
You
maybe
will
that's my
notice,
homework.
because both of these movies are based on real life events, and uniquely so, because none of his other movies are based on real life events, particularly very well known real life events
Yeah.
involving some very well known people from the real world. There's a lot of comparisons in between how Oppenheimer and Dunkirk are structured in terms of like telling, I think, like three separate storylines that are all connected but shown in this non-linear way, in a way that feels poetic. And also, these are stories that don't, not within any filmmaker's hand, or in most filmmakers' hands, they wouldn't be able to make these stories feel as engaging as what Christopher Nolan is able to do. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, like with Oppenheimer, like just because what was impressing, because that's one of the biggest things I like about Christopher Nolan films. So I look for it now because I know he's always going to deliver on this. He has, and I love the rule of threes in filmmaking, like, and that tends to just has this like quality that it plays better in the human mind. So in this movie, the story is basically about three things. It's a story of making of the atom bomb with the Los Alamos, and so we see all of that play out, and that kind of concludes what feels like around the halfway mark of the movie by the time we get to the end. Although like in the moment you're thinking, oh look, there's it, that's it, like now we're done.
Yeah.
But no, the whole story, and then like from there, and even though up until that point we have had intercutting the sequences of them making the bomb with the Senate hearing for Strauss, and like what's everything that we've been seeing in the personal life of Robert Oppenheimer. And then once the bomb is made, and then after that we, I think, transition to really like what's going on with the personal life of Oppenheimer, and then the not just the celebratory consequences, but also some of the bad things that Robert Oppenheimer had to go through in the post World War II era. And then we really start to focus on the Senate hearing, and then he kind of wraps it all up by the end in a way where, like, I think thematically, this where we end on the shot of Cillian Murphy, just the terror in his eyes, and then you see like what, by that time we have seen that shot a few times, but now we are seeing that shot was really like the vision in his mind. That is him, at that point. I think the intent is that it's metaphorically true that they did set the world on fire, metaphorically speaking. Like we entered this new age where humans could destroy each other at a moment's notice with just the press of a button, and that's something that was never possible before. And it's just
But I
the
also,
gravity of that statement, like I really appreciated that.
I also think that it, getting to see the remorse of someone who had that much power, in a sense of like creating the bomb, but also to see, I mean, there's just the different parts about it, like to see how Truman basically like threw him away after he created this.
Yeah, he called him a crybaby.
Yeah,
which I'm
literally, like
that's just not.
And I wonder
cool.
if those things are historically accurate, but like to see how the US military kind of like threw him away after he did this huge thing for the US, right? But like it's this terrifying thing. Like the atom bomb is terrifying. Scientifically, as a scientist, he was very much interested in the science the whole way. But then as you get further and further into the movie, you realize, like, as a person, he really struggles with what he has created, because it is this weapon of mass destruction. And I think they said that they weren't even sure how many people, like, they had estimates of like how many people and how many miles would be affected, but based off of the cities that they dropped them on, it killed way more than they thought it was going
And
to,
the numbers
right?
kept going up. They were like,
Yeah.
because and they were more than their estimates. And even then,
Yeah.
and like, it was just, I think one of the, remember that one scene where one of the, I don't know if it's one of the politicians or one of the cabinet members at that
Yeah.
time, who's like, oh, we're gonna take that one city from consideration because it's holds
Oh,
cultural
because that's where we
significance to Japan.
vacation.
And
Yeah,
yeah, because of
Kyoto.
vacation, which was like, it got a chuckle out in the moment, but from the audience in my theater, which I think
I
was
think I
meant to be
scoffed.
that,
Yeah, I
but at the
scoffed
same
at that.
time, it was like this dark humor that, like, how cynical some people and the moment took a decision that really changed the world. And it has, for, I mean, if there's, I mean, there's many events through our history that have defined
Yeah.
the era we live in today. But I think in many ways, the event that kind of changed the world, and the world that, I mean, we would have a totally different world today if nuclear energy wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's how we're using it as a weapon, or whether it's how we're using it as a source of energy, or the advancements that it has led to in physics.
Yeah.
But like the biggest thing beyond that for me was like was geeking out over this movie because I'm a big like scientific science nerd, kind of a geek thing. So like when they're just like casually bringing in like a Niels Bohr or Werner Heisenberg or like these people, I'm like, oh my god, there's that guy. Oh, I know that scientist. I know his story like from science class or from history class, and
Yeah.
and it's just, so I was geeking out over this movie in so many ways.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
this really does mention like the top scientists of that time, right? Like we have
and
all of
Einstein
them. And then
just,
we even get to
yeah,
see Einstein. I was like,
yeah,
oh, but also to see
yeah.
how all of those scientific frontrunners all came together or like apart in some way to lead into the creation of this in itself is like kind of insane. Like I don't know if there was ever a massive time in history that all of these people would be together
I mean,
like
we've
that.
seen so many movies about like the space program, right? Like, and how
Yeah.
big of an achievement, and TV shows like For All Mankind is like an alternate history show, but also there's stuff like The Right Stuff, and whether you want the movie or like I think there was a series about it. But there's, like when the entire country or the world came together to do something big, that is a
Yeah.
cultural moment that is forever going to live in time and has historical significance. So this movie, it shows you that it was like this very revolutionary special time in the
Yeah.
world of science, where all of these names that we see their names on plaques and buildings and prestigious institutions, they were all alive and working together on something this big.
Yeah.
And then to see how again Christopher Nolan grounds everything in character, all of his stories. And so to see like how Cillian Murphy played the role of, and then just showing us on screen just like how racked with guilt Robert Oppenheimer was. I mean, to be able to show on screen in any movie or TV show, in any visual medium, something as internal as guilt, that's
Yeah.
difficult. And I mean, there were some, and as well as like just the nuances of his relationship with his wife, or his lover before that, and just how like he went through that at different stages of his life.
Yeah.
I have not, in my out of theater review, I call this movie deeply emotionally affecting, because I don't
Yeah.
think I've ever seen a biopic like be this visceral and this cinematic, while also being this personal and this intimate, and that's
Truly
Christopher Nolan's way.
beautiful. Like everything about this movie, I really think that this is going to be like a staple of cinematic history for a long time. And then you have to talk about the cast. Like we've got Cillian Murphy, we have Florence Pugh, who I actually didn't realize was in this movie until I saw her, Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Jack Quaid, Matt Damon. Like it keeps going. Every single person in this movie. I mean, we have Rami Malek in this movie too. Like,
and playing like what
every
seems like a relatively
single
insignificant role until like the third act, and you're like, wait, why did they have Rami Malek playing this like little scientist, and then like he becomes so significant? Yeah.
I mean, truly, like there was not a single person on the screen at any point in time that I was like, I really don't know who that is. Well, I mean, maybe one if I like really think about it, but for the most part, I knew who everyone in this movie was, and everyone played a significance to some extent as far as the story went. Everybody did a great job. I think this was some of Emily Blunt's best acting. Truly, I don't know if I've ever seen her do a better job of like playing, because she plays essentially like a housewife, right? But she really is Oppenheimer's partner. She really plays this like very strong, but also she's clearly an alcoholic, but she plays that line so well because she's clearly very intelligent. And in the beginning, they tell you that she's a biologist, but you only get that one hint. And then she comes through very strongly in the end with like, I mean, truly, she saves Oppenheimer.
When she's in that interrogation,
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
like, you go, girl. Like the way she was
Phenomenal.
coming back at Jason Clarke's
Phenomenal.
character. Yeah, I love that.
Yes.
That was one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie was
Yeah.
how that plays out. And you can see
It's just,
that where Oppenheimer's sitting behind her saying, yeah, this is the
Yeah.
woman who I made the right decision to stick
Yeah.
by her side and for her to stick by my side. Like those are those like relationship defining moments.
yeah.
And it just like it hit me like really like that was
But also,
one of my
I feel like
favorite
their
moments.
marriage is so real. Like it shows like the true caveats of a marriage during that time. It was fairly normal for men to cheat on their wives, which look, I'm not in like that's not okay, right? But that was a very normal historical thing during that time. Like their infidelity is like one of the leading causes of divorce, but nobody got divorced in that time. And it shows the true caveats of like being with someone. Obviously, you clearly see like her alcoholism after the baby. Like it, all the caveats of this marriage felt so real, so true, so like full in a way as far as the story was told. And then you have this, like this, truly every segment of this movie, I'm like, wow, like, wow. And I feel like everyone has to go see it, period. It'll make you think, it makes you like look back at it like, holy crap, they just did such a great job.
And I mentioned earlier that walking out of Barbie, I called that the best movie of the year. And and you know what? Right now, I think Barbie is still one of the best movies of the year. But I am willing to, without any hesitations at this point, tell you that Oppenheimer is the best movie of the year. Cillian Murphy is going to get nominated for the
I feel like
on
he
Oscar.
has to.
Robert Downey Jr., who's I think probably put up his best performance of his career, and
Yes.
the moment in the one of my other favorite moments in the movie that I'm like, yes, he's gonna get a Best Supporting Actor Oscar for this, or at least be nominated for it, because when you saw that conversation with Aiden Ehrenreich's character and doing their hearing there and off in the room and during like lunch break, when he turns like that scene and you realize, oh, he's the bad guy, and oh, he's been the bad guy, and it's just like the sin. I mean, there was a collective gasp, and then I could feel the audience processing that after, and
Well,
particularly
also,
Robert
for
Downey Jr.
someone who was a staple superhero in the Marvel Universe, my favorite superhero, as an actor, it's really hard to come back from that. Like, once you play a superhero, it's really hard to get out of that typecast. It's really hard to play anything defining outside of that. I mean, Chris Hemsworth, I don't know if we'll ever see him play anything like really defining outside of Thor. I don't know if it'll happen. And then even with Guardians of the Galaxy, like all of those characters, for the most part, up until, what is her? With a little, she's like the cute little alien.
Nebula. Yeah.
Nebula. Okay,
Tom
but
Clemente. Yeah.
Actor. I was shocked when I saw her in Mission Possible because I didn't even realize it was her, right? But there's so many actors that just don't get the chance. Robert Downey Jr. not only got the chance, but he nailed it. I hated his character. I hated him. From the moment he stepped on the screen, I was like, something about him gives me the ick. And obviously he ended up being the villain, but he played it so well. I'm like, truly, I cannot say anything bad about any of the acting in this movie.
Yeah,
Not a
the first time
single note.
watching this movie, there's just so many like these pivotal emotional moments that all land so perfectly that it's just
Mm-hmm.
hard to, yeah, I mean this is the best movie of the year. And I mean yeah, Robert Downey Jr., like he's tried with like Doolittle, with The Judge, and nothing seems
Yeah.
to have stuck outside the MCU. But I think with this movie, he's opening himself up to doing a taking on different kinds of roles that probably will. And then it's not like every movie that he plays a character like what he's playing here is going to be as
Mm-hmm.
big, because ultimately this is a Christopher Nolan movie, a movie that somehow they made for only $100 million. So it's gonna make like more than
A
enough
lot
money
of
to
money,
break
yeah.
even. It's already like more than broken even. I think it's off to like what, like $300 million global already, and of that
Oh, I
over
didn't
80
even know.
million
Yeah. They
domestic.
had an 80 million here.
Yeah, and then it's 300 plus globally, and that's
Yeah.
just the opening weekend. So I'm like, this movie's already in the green. I mean,
Yeah.
so
It's
yeah,
got
for
a
everybody involved.
94% Rotten Tomato score, 8.8 on IMDb. Like,
Yep.
everybody is loving this movie,
You know
you
what the
guys.
best thing about Barbenheimer is the fact that everybody agrees that they like it and how much they like it. Because when I look,
Oh,
it is
love.
rare to see this.
Big
It's
love.
so rare to see this. On
Yeah.
Rotten Tomatoes, Barbie's critic and audience score are both 90%. And for
Mm-hmm.
Oppenheimer, their critic and audience scores are both 94%. And it's like,
Oh, that's so
Rotten Tomatoes is
good.
getting into it because Barbie's
Yeah.
page has got pink all over. And then when you go on
Oh.
Oppenheimer, they've got black and everything. So they're
Yeah.
thematic pages. So this is like a full blown phenomenon. I don't think this is people are gonna like all of a sudden be like, oh, opening weekend event and saw it once, don't want to see it again. Because both of these movies, while Oppenheimer is a movie that you will gain more an appreciation for the details on second and third rewatches, Barbie is one of those just watchable movies that you would just have fun going to rewatch. So I think both of these movies will get repeat business and people will bring their friends and the word of mouth will only continue to spread. I personally am looking forward to going to see it a second time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's rare that I go see a movie second time in theaters. How about you?
I'm definitely going to go see Barbie on Wednesday. I might wait to rewatch Oppenheimer until I can watch it from home. Surround sound, just watch it from home. I don't know. IMAX was really loud and the movie is really long, you guys. So normally I only give those, like, I get fully immersed in the experience the one time and then I like to watch it from home. But I definitely will see the movie again.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, look. Ultimately, you can't go wrong with either of these movies. Barbenheimer is here. If you guys have not gone and taken part in this global phenomena, then do go see it. I personally would not recommend that you go watch both movies on the same day or back to back. So make time for Oppenheimer, then make time for Barbie, or Barbie and then Oppenheimer, whichever order you go and see it in. If you already saw both, one or the other, just leave us a comment below. Tell us what you thought. Like, did we get like our analysis of like how Oppenheimer ends right? We want to know what you think about like how the timeline kind of fits together in there. What did you think about the stuff in Barbie, like I'm Knuff or I'll beat you any day, which are all references that Angelina you'll understand better after you see the movie. But yeah, hit the like button and subscribe, and keep coming back for more. We're going to be reviewing movies like this the rest of the year. There's still a lot to come. So many good movies to come later this year. But right now, I want to pivot a little bit. Let's talk about DC stuff. Like on this channel, we have this thing called DCU Daily. So on today's episode of DCU Daily, I want to talk to you, Angelina, about this story that came out earlier last week, and then it got quickly debunked by James Gunn. So there's this website called Giant Freaking Robot, which is
Mm-hmm.
for everybody in the nerddom who's into comic book movies. And even like if you're into just action and just big blockbuster Hollywood franchises, they're one of the websites out there that gives you good story and coverage. They're not like Variety or Hollywood Reporter. They're not like a industry trade kind of a site or Deadline. However, they occasionally have a scoop here and there, and sometimes it's a good one, sometimes it's not. They had a story running that Daniel Craig was being offered the role of Lex Luthor in the new DCU, so that the upcoming Superman Legacy movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the people, who was clearly reading the article went on Threads and sent James Gunn a message saying, "Hey, is this true?" with a screenshot of the story. And then James Gunn on Threads responded with a very clear and concise, "That is not true," or "This is not true." So the question I'm bringing to you today is, let's say for theoretically speaking, right? Like, because there's many reasons why this doesn't have to be true. The most obvious being because
Mm-hmm.
James Gunn said it, and then it's just factually not true. It could also be that they were in negotiations, but with the SAG-AFTRA strike, they can't really talk about it until it's
Sure.
official. They can't talk about it. There just goes against. I'm sure James Gunn would not want to go against the union in any way. There's so many reasons, or it just maybe it was something that was happening at one point, and then it fell apart because it wasn't a good fit. For whatever the reason might be, I just want to play devil's advocate, or just let's theoretically say that Daniel Craig was offered the role of Lex Luthor in Superman Legacy, an actor of his caliber, who I think is probably the greatest James Bond of all time, who is currently doing fantastically well for himself in those Knives Out movies. What do you think about the idea of Daniel Craig possibly playing Lex Luthor in the DC?
Honestly, I think it would be because we chose Bill Skarsgård as like our it out of the choices we had, right? But if Daniel Craig is in the mix, like it has to be Daniel Craig. I think I think it would be really good for him to be able to play Lex Luthor, to play the villain after playing those. Okay, I'm sorry. Knives Out is like so whatever. Like his character in Knives Out is so hokey,
over the top, like
very
he has
hokey.
fun with it.
I am not
Clearly.
into it. And so after seeing him play Bond, right, the Bond, James Bond, it would be so good to like find him in a character that can be taken a little bit more seriously, can sort of dive into the depths, and be super fun to see him play the villain. I'm like, yes, absolutely, he would be my choice. But have I ever seen him play the villain before? I don't know if I have. Has he ever played the villain?
I don't know. He's definitely had some before James Bond. He wasn't really like a A-list actor. I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
Like he was doing a lot of supporting roles. I believe maybe one or two of his supporting roles were like he wasn't playing somebody who was you would consider an antagonist. But I don't believe he's really played any kind of like iconic or memorable villainous roles. So
this would
yeah.
be awesome. Like it'd be super cool to see it. I definitely think he has the capacity to do it. I'm not worried about his like capacity as an antagonist, but he would be my choice. But you're right. I mean, if James Gunn shut it down, there's a chance that he shut it down because negotiations aren't done. There's a chance that he shut it down because of the SAG strike, which is affecting everything. Because it would look really, really bad to cast somebody during the strike right now, and it would look really bad on Daniel Craig if he accepted a role right now. So
definitely.
It could be either way, but James Gunn could. I mean, it might not happen. Dan, how would you feel if it didn't happen? Are you okay? Will you be okay?
I will be okay because look, I love the idea of somebody like Bill Skarsgård playing it. I think when we talked about it last week, Bill Skarsgård, Alexander Skarsgård, Nicholas Hoult, Jesse Eisenberg, whoever plays Lex Luthor, I think all of those.
I still stand by it. I really don't want to
to
see Nicholas Hoult play Lex Luthor. I don't.
Well, but as terms of being talented actors who have the emotional depth to be able to kind of play a character who has like a lot of layers to him, because if you go by the on-screen portrayals of Lex Luthor, or if you go by the comics or the animated shows and TV appearances over the years, Lex Luthor is an incredibly complex character. He's one of the best, most iconic comic book characters of all time, especially when you consider, whether it's a villain or from the rogues gallery of any superhero, or just a character who's not super powered, but there is so much to him in terms of what he aspires to, how he serves as a foil to Superman, as well as just who Lex Luthor is in general as a person. I think Daniel Craig has all the talent in the world to come in and play a fantastic version of Lex Luthor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of, whether it's true or not. We'll find out. As of right now, James Gunn is saying that this is not true. Doesn't mean we won't get a casting announcement, once the strike is over and we get back to movie making in Hollywood. Until then, or it may never happen. Like for all we know, we will get like a Bill Skarsgård, which would be perfectly, fine. I think it would be great. Ultimately, when the movie comes out, you judge the movie on its merits. And I think I'm looking forward to Superman Legacy because the casting they have already confirmed, whether it's Nathan Fillion as Green Lantern, David Cornsweet as Superman, or Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, those are all great castings. So, hey, we're going to be talking more about all of this stuff on DCU Daily. As every time new things break out, I think one of the things I'm going to talk about in the upcoming episodes is Blue Beetle's box office projections are coming out now, and they're not very good. So we'll talk about that on a future episode of DCU Daily. But until then, Keep coming back here for updates again daily. Monday to Friday, we give you the latest from the world of DCU, everything DC related. And thanks again for joining me on this special version of DCU Daily. Okay, so right now let's kind of pivot to talking about the SAG-AFTRA strike, right? We have the historic SAG-AFTRA WGA joint strike, the first one since 1960, is happening right now. It's a situation that I feel like it's still in the process of getting worse before it's going to get better, because before, when the negotiations were going on, basically what we were told, was that they won't be talking to the media. Neither side, AMPTP or SAG-AFTRA, will be talking to the media while negotiations were ongoing, which is perfectly fine. You don't want to negotiate in the public eye, and you don't want to, because either side will then try to play the public, to their side and get the public opinion on their side. So where we are at now, though, with the strike ongoing, is it seems like that is exactly what's happening. This is playing out in the public eye. What do you think is going on at this point? Where is SAG-AFTRA at? And being boots on the ground in LA, what is the situation like with the strike?
Right now, I have to strike next week. I have already talked to friends. I haven't been out there. I need to go to the picket lines. It's like not only sort of an ethical and a moral thing, but just like to stand by my fellow actors and just really make sure that I'm doing my part, right? Like, it's a crazy space to be in. You're seeing the AMPTP and SAG going back and forth online. They said that they weren't going to talk about it, and now they're talking about it. There's no real movements. I actually talked to a writer friend of mine, and she was like, the WGA is not going to get any further in negotiations until SAG has finalized their all the decisions, which is crazy to me because the WGA has been striking, and you would think that the AMPTP would really want to just like make the writers happy at this point. But I guess WGA is holding out to see what SAG gets and then change their negotiations. So there's a lot up in the air. I don't know what's going to happen right now. I feel like everything that SAG is arguing for is like a good thing to argue for. And that's where I'm at. I'm standing with the people. I hope that we get everything and all that we need, because at the end of the day, like, it's necessary in order to move forward.
So as far as the SAG-AFTRA strike goes, right now we've had this article that I read this on Deadline. I'm sure other sites are talking about it too. The AMPTP put out this document talking about, well, look, the SAG-AFTRA also put out a document, I think it was a week or so ago, basically talking about, hey, this is what we had asked for, this is where we had disagreements, and then this is what the studios refused to give us. And so the AMPTP, the producer side, basically the studio representatives, they put out a document just now where they basically said, look, we were kind of misrepresented in that statement from SAG-AFTRA earlier, and so we want to clarify a few things. And so that has included their stance on AI and how digital replicas are background actors, things of that nature. Also in residuals and like wage increases that they're proposed. They've mentioned how in some areas they didn't have an agreement, but they were working towards it, and more work has to be done. So they've admitted to that in some areas. They've said that some things regarding the AI side of the conversation were misrepresented by SAG-AFTRA. Did you have a chance to kind of read into this a little bit? Like, what do you think? Because to me, it means this is kind of just now out in the open that they're fighting the fight. It's negotiating in the public eye.
And the SAG has already responded again, saying like, we will not respond to AMPTP's actual rebuttal until we have time to fully look at the document, because apparently the document is crazy long, which I think on SAG's end, that's really smart. I think it's really easy to fire off these comments, right? Because it's not like people are like sitting down to interview these people. They're taking these quotes from situational things. People are just saying stuff. So I think it's really, really smart of SAG to just be like, we're not issuing an actual response to this right now. But what they did say was everything we've released is fully accurate. and there are no discrepancies. We have done our best to make sure that it's only accurate information going out. So I think AMPTP is really just trying to start a little war in the public. That's kind of what it seems like, right? Like,
I feel like this is a he said, she said, and then
Yeah.
because when the negotiations were going on, they were like, they had agreed, we are not going to discuss our negotiations in the public
Yeah.
eye. And that's usually how negotiations go. You don't want to kind of, toss your dirty laundry out in front of the world for them to see.
Well, because it also
So-
affects negotiations 1000% because of public policy,
public opinion. Yeah, exactly. And but now it seems like because they're on strike and nobody's at the table discussing this stuff, they're just now kind of throwing all that dirty laundry out into the open and saying, well, look, this is what our version of this went like, and that's what their version went like. I do see some of what they have said here. Like, for example, ultimately, when you look at one of the biggest things that they disagree on here, the AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA, and even the WGA, right? It's AI. Like, AI is a big part of what's holding us back from any deal. The residual increases and all those things are, part of the process, but those have been part of previous negotiations. Wage increases, working conditions, the amount of hours you can spend on set, all of those things, pension contributions, those are all, none of those things are new per se. And so I don't think those would be like deal breakers. We would eventually kind of figure out the right numbers for everybody. People can compromise. We have done that before. Where I think we're really in new territory is the AI part. And ultimately, you can go on the deadline, you can read this 23-page AMPTP document. And in the deadline article, they also link you to the SAG-AFTRA document from a couple of weeks ago. But to just kind of summarize, I think where we are at here is AMPTP sees that AI as an inevitability, and so they want to do what they feel is best in the studio's interest to establish rules for AI's use and then leave it open for that to evolve down the road. Whereas and again, this is my opinion based on what I am reading and how I'm interpreting it. So for everybody that's out, you're welcome to read all of this and then make your own opinion on this. But studios see this as a necessary evil because, AI is here to stay. AI is not going anywhere. And SAG-AFTRA, I don't think is necessarily denying that, but I think SAG-AFTRA, what they are emphasizing here is the slippery slope argument. The slippery slope, basically, if we're going to deal with AI, we need to deal with it in the most comprehensive way imaginable. So there is no open-endedness to it. There is no way for either side to find some sort of loophole to exploit down the road, because we know in business, and especially in a cutthroat business like Hollywood, if there's a loophole, if there's a way that somebody can get away with something, especially when it involves paying less money, they're going to do that. And I think that's where really there's disagreements, is that the studios are saying this is a necessary evil. We're willing to put some rules forward, and we're willing to see where this goes and evolves over time. And SAG-AFTRA is like, okay, but you clearly are not doing enough due diligence here to put enough of a framework around this, that we are protecting the likenesses of our members who are ultimately going to be affected by this. The studio executives' faces are not in the movies and on the posters and the trailers. It's our members, our actors.
Have you seen the new season of Black Mirror?
I've actually seen parts of it, and I saw the trailer, but the Selma Hayek episode, right? Is that what the one you're talking about? Yeah.
It is so creepy accurate about what what the SAG is scared of. And I actually just did this digital likeness job for ESPN, right? But I don't know what it's going into. I sold them my digital likeness. It's only available for this amount of time once they start using it. But I don't know what game it's going to be in. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what character I'm playing. My likeness, my digital likeness, is going into a database where it will sit and be stored until some video game developer is like, I want her in my video game. I will be eventually in some sort of video game. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know why, I don't know what character. That's a little worrisome, right? But this is like the beginnings of that digital likeness situation. And when you look at Black Mirror, that episode really plays it out really well. There right now is no information. People are not required to provide me with information. I either choose to take the job or I don't do the job. as far as selling my facial likeness to some disembodied character that I have no idea about, right? And when I get a script, like I get to okay the script. I get to decide whether or not I want to play this character, and I sign a contract and I do this, and I have influence over how I play the character. I have influence sometimes even on lines in the script, if based off of like what kind of job it is. Like
Yeah.
it's freaky to know that they're trying to open up the door to more of that without wanting to give us more information on the front end.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and I think like where the disagreements right now are ultimately again where the studios are like, well, we're willing to put some framework around it, but SAG-AFTRA feels like there's not enough being offered here.
yeah.
If you're gonna go down that road, then we need to really set some boundaries and really set some very specific, rules in place so that nobody gets exploited. And to be completely fair, I think SAG-AFTRA has more to worry about because it's their members who would probably suffer the most in case somebody somewhere decides to
Also, as
exploit
digital likenesses
a
go,
likeness.
like financially on that side of it, like what you pay to have my likeness, you should also pay me residuals for every time it's used. Where I also feel like they might not be as
Yeah,
forthcoming with that. They want to pay on the front end, like, no, we'll pay for your likeness. Okay, but you still have to pay residuals every time you use my likeness. Or like if you use my likeness in different movies, that should be two different fees. Like it's so there's a lot to be
yeah,
sort of
absolutely.
reframed. Yeah.
Uh, and in that document from the AMPTP, they mentioned like, hey, look, obtaining a consent for every time a likeness is used somewhere beyond the original project that you signed, that has to be part of the process. That they would bargain a new rate or compensation at that point in time. But yeah, it doesn't really mention a lot about residuals, or if it does, I haven't had a chance to really be able to kind of dig into details. So somebody else who has done all the reading, I'm sure, let us know in the comments what you found. But definitely, I think that's part of the slippery slope argument that we could end up in a situation where, so your likeness was used in something and maybe you got paid up front, but then, where's the residuals? And then there's the business side of it. So I think just looking at it from the other side, the studios could say, well, we use your likeness on a separate project and you got paid for that, but we can't pay you residuals because you didn't actually do any extra work. We did the work and kind of use your likeness. But that, even if you put that argument aside, there's the business sense. Like, it wouldn't make a lot of business sense when this is the other side of one of the other issues in this is streaming, and residuals for streaming is a similar situation where I don't think studios are making enough money with this operating model to be able to even give the kind of residuals that they used to be able to do in like cable television era when you had advertising everywhere. So they were making enough money from the broadcast, and the syndication was a big part of how the actors got residuals. I think now with streaming, it's just they're not making, like, where's the money going to come from for them to give residuals, because they're just not making as much money or from advertisers. So I think ultimately we either going to end up in a situation where advertising will be as ubiquitous in streaming as it was in cable and still is in cable, or we're going to need to figure out some other financial structure as to how these things are budgeted and made and distributed. I also think that this ties into the theatrical window. The shortening of the theatrical window has affected, I think, a lot of movies' box office, because people are like, well, I can just wait 3 months and it's going to be on Disney Plus. Back in the day, 3 months after the movie came out, it may only just come out on digital, and you either rent it or you buy it, and then 2-3 months after that, it would go on some premium streaming service that you may not have, and then it may come to the streaming service you have, and then maybe a year after the movie came out.
It's actually where Netflix first got their start. Remember when Netflix, literally you had to pick out, like, you paid a monthly thing and then you picked out like one movie, and then you only got another movie when you returned that movie, and they charged you fees just like Blockbuster did if you went over your movie. We had a Netflix subscription early because it was like right when Blockbuster was sort of like petering out, and we wanted a place where we could just go rent a movie that was easy peasy. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely going to change the framework of Hollywood as a whole.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
it needs to happen.
I mean, George Clooney said it. I think there was a social media. I think it was on Instagram that I saw somebody post about this, and I forget the exact nature of the quote, but George Clooney basically said, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of other people, actors, producers, who have said that these are landmark times in terms of like
Yeah.
Hollywood. The way we have been operating is not sustainable, and so moving forward, these strikes, in order for them to resolve these strikes, and the actor strikes are having a much bigger immediate impact on the studio's bottom line, especially if they can't release movies like Dune Part Two and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. That's just the start of how this these strikes are actually affecting the bottom lines and the profitability of studios, not just in the short term but in the long term. So we need to change what we're doing. And yeah, like George Clooney and many actors have said, the change from here has to be a sea change, like the way we do business, the way Hollywood operates, what Hollywood is, even in terms of like a source of storytelling. It has to be different because it's not as equitable as it needs to be, so that everybody, and on many levels, like the SAG-AFTRA and the WGA just want their members to be able to pay their basic living wages, so that they can pay their bills and they can have a normal life.
A life.
No,
A life.
nobody's looking for like millions of dollars for doing the work they were previously getting nowhere close to that. I think it's just
Yeah.
there's a lot of basic. So if the system has so much inequality that the people on the top are making hundreds of millions of dollars and the people at the very bottom can't even pay the rent or put food on their table,
Yeah.
that's clearly very inequitable, and we need to change that. And I sincerely hope that the strikes that are ongoing will make that change. Hopefully, before people start to lose their houses or can't pay their bills,
Yeah.
and it's getting rough really fast. And I think the actor strike is going to push the studios a lot more than the WGA, because they can't have the excuse of we have scripts in the bank now, stuff like that. Like, actors can't do anything. There's no Comic-Con, there's no movie promotions, and that has a significant impact on movies. So
On
hopefully,
the whole, yeah.
hopefully we'll get back on track. We're going to be, we've been doing coverage of the SAG-AFTRA strike and the WGA strike every week. We're going to keep doing that here. So keep coming back, checking in, and we'll keep talking about the latest developments. We'll give you our insight. You are welcome to leave us a comment below about what you think about the strike. If you're out there on the picket lines, stay hydrated, stay safe, and of course, let us know how things are going for you. And then if you like what we are talking about, then you can hit the like button and then hit subscribe for more content like this. So now, before we end the show, let's just quickly talk about what's coming out next week. I know Barbenheimer is probably still going to be happening next week and for weeks to come. And we, of course, still have Mission Impossible in theaters. So next week, we have this one big new movie, and that's a Disney film, which is not a remake of another movie, but it's a new adaptation of the famous Haunted Mansion ride, because we had The Haunted Mansion in 2003 with Eddie Murphy, and that was a movie that I don't think anybody remembers as like a big blockbuster classic of its time.
Yeah,
And I think it's a bit of a cult classic amongst Disney audiences.
Yeah.
So now we have a new movie called Haunted Mansion, not The Haunted Mansion, but just Haunted Mansion. Literally 20 years on from the original or the first. I don't believe they have any connection. But what do you think about this Haunted Mansion movie? It's coming out in July. And
yeah, I really question the timeline. Like, I feel like this movie would have been better served coming out closer to Halloween. I think it would have played as like the family favorite for like a good Halloween movie. So coming out in the middle of summer, I'm like, I don't know about that. And then also, like, the movie was kind of like, whatever. Like, it was a good Eddie Murphy movie, right? Like, you saw it for a laugh. I love Eddie Murphy, right? I love him. Like, he's great. You went to go see that 2003 iteration of The Haunted Mansion for Eddie Murphy. So, I mean, there are a lot of stars in this new movie, but it just feels like so lackluster after Barbenheimer, after going to see all of the movies the last few months. It feels like out of place, but I mean, I'll give it a chance. You never know. It might surprise me. It
Yeah,
won't
I mean,
surprise me. I don't think it's going to surprise me.
it's look, that's my thing. I don't know how much money they spent on this, right? It looks like it's a visual effects heavy project. It's
Mm.
much more of a visceral take on a haunted mansion story or whatever story the ride tells. Really, I haven't been on the ride myself, so I don't really know what
Oh,
exactly the
really?
story is. No, I'm not.
Oh,
And
maybe I think that's maybe like a Florida thing because growing up in Florida, like I feel like we have so many of these super famous Disney rides, and like we had Universal, we had Disney, we had Busch Gardens, and we had like all of the water parks. So there was just everybody I knew had a park pass. They give you Florida residents like annual discounts to go to those, and we did. We sure did. So I have been on the ride. The ride is old. I think they actually talked about replacing it, which it makes it even funnier that they're releasing a movie based off of it because I think they've talked about replacing it with like a I don't even know I don't know. They talked about replacing it. I don't know how long the ride is going to be around. It's old. It's an old ride.
it is that's one of the things I know, that it's one of those older rides. It's one of the iconic rides. It's also
Yeah.
like, Disney has a record of making movies based on rides. I think probably the
Mhm.
biggest example, the most successful
Pirates
example
of
is
the Caribbean. The best.
which is amazing. I think they really struck a chord with that, which I think they've tried with other rides and nothing has quite stuck that quite the same. And now that that uh, franchise has sort of dried up for the most part, there I don't I this just I'm not saying this is a creatively bankrupt move. I definitely think this is a movie. I'm gonna go see it and I'm gonna judge it based on the merits of the movie itself. But and the actors are good: Danny DeVito, Jared Leto, Jamie Lee Curtis, Rosario
Yeah.
Dawson, Winona Ryder, Owen Wilson. They have talent, but it's just one of those movies that I don't think is going to be able to make a mark at a time or in a year where you have so many other iconic
Yeah.
properties coming out. So
I really would have pushed the release until October because I think around October it would have been the family pick for Halloween. Who
yeah, I mean, I
releases
don't
this
know what
funny movie
the
in
release schedule
July?
looks
Like it's
like.
weird. Like
Yeah,
it's
but
just strange to me. Especially
goal
because
is
Barbie is technically family friendly, right? So like people are taking their kids to go see Barbie. I would take my kid to go see Barbie over the haunted mansion, not the haunted mansion. Sorry.
yeah, like for me, the only upside that I see from what they're doing with this release schedule and having it come out in the summer is that this kind of puts it on track to land on Disney Plus around Halloween time. And there's movies like there's some Pixar movies recently and a few other things that Disney has put out theatrically that didn't really do well, and then had got a second life once it made it into streaming on Disney Plus. So maybe they're hoping that even if it doesn't do well here in theaters, that come Halloween time it will be one of their biggest hits, and it may have a whole new following on Disney Plus. So maybe that's the
It just
potential
seems like a
upside.
weird marketing plan to hope it does well on streaming at Halloween. It's like a
Yeah, I mean,
weird.
it's not even. I mean, they haven't really been marketing this movie all that much anyway. So
Yeah, I don't
I
know if
don't.
I've seen anything. I think maybe I've seen like I saw a trailer for it a few months ago, and then I think I've seen one billboard for it. I'm hoping it pleasantly surprises me. There are a lot of good people in it. It should be like a good like family comedy, but I don't know.
Yeah, the trailers haven't really impressed me, but I mean, hey, look, we're gonna go see it.
Yep.
We're gonna talk about it for the good or the bad or the ugly. We'll see how it goes. It could be a surprise that we love it, or it could be just a total bomb. Who knows? But Barbenheimer will probably still have a grip on movie theaters. So if you guys go watch Haunted Mansion and you're interested in talking about it, then come back here next week. We'll be talking about it. Let us know in the comments below what you think about the movies. If you went to see the movies this week, then we'd love to hear from you. If you're going to be going to see Haunted Mansion, or if you're going to go back to see Barbie and Oppenheimer next week, or even Mission Impossible, let us know. And of course, as always, hit the like button, subscribe. We love, having you guys around. It really helps us out when you hit the like button. And it's been nice talking about the movies again. We do this once a week. And Angelina, as always, it's been great having you here with me.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have a great weekend, you guys.
All right, guys, and have a great and amazing week ahead at the movies.